first of all, I just want to touch this topic of the fact that they didn't send someone to the public hearing, and now Sundar Pichai is going for this private meeting. What do you think's behind that, and do you think that's a sensible strategy?
I think that a lot of it just comes down to not being lumped in with all the other tech companies and really being able to answer the questions in a more private setting.
And in terms of what the GOP lawmakers are kind of pushing at, whether there's this conservative, anti-conservative bias on Google, is that a fair accusation for them to be making, or are they kind of trying to search for ways to unhinge Google?
Yeah, I think President Trump's allegations about trying to skew the search results away conservatives, it's not the way that Google works. It's not the way that their search algorithm works at all. I think the bigger issues that they're going to need to address are around data privacy and real concerns from lawmakers about whether or not people are able to contain their data and keep it. And that follows some of the regulations that have already happened, the European regulations around data. And people ask me, are regulations going to be here? Well, actually, they're already here. California has already enacted regulations which go into place in November.
But it just feels like, in the U.S. at least, and this is not Europe. I mean, last hour we spoke to Margaret Vestager, who is going after all these companies. But in the U.S., it feels like all the regulators are on different pages. I mean, most of the Republicans are upset with Google because they think that they're censoring conservative voices and sources, which is very different than protecting users' privacy.
Well, you're right. Everyone's got a different axe to grind. A lot of this is political. Democrats are upset with Facebook because they know about the amount of voter suppression that took place through Facebook, as well as a bunch of bad actors like Cambridge Analytica. So, of course, these are two of the most important companies in our economy, and they really rule the web. Not surprised that they're going to be polarizing.
For that reason, I almost wonder if there's anything that the management teams can do to seem transparent enough, to seem as if they're giving a good faith effort and still not have one side or both say, you're more convenient to us as a villain than it is in our interest to get to the bottom of this stuff.
Yeah, they've already made some attempts. And so Google has said they're no longer going to be scraping people's emails. I think that the most important thing they could do is give people really access to their data so that they know what's the data that either Google or Facebook have, and give some way in which people can take down their data.
In terms of whether regulation comes or not, do you think this sector versus all other sectors is most in the spotlight because it does attract criticism from both the Democrats and the Republicans? And I guess getting through the midterms and focusing on 2020 election could only make that worse.
Well, I mean, I think they're in the spotlight mainly because the Google and Facebook are the internet. And the internet people use every day. You use your Android phone, you're using your Gmail, you're using Facebook, Instagram. So it's not surprising that they're going to be under a lot of scrutiny. And also, they're very controversial. Their role that they play in people's lives, whether it's privacy or advertising, they're very important in terms of our economy.
Evan? Yeah.
Well, my wife is an executive at Google, so I'm not going to the Google route. But I want to talk a little bit about Europe and about the interview that you had earlier an hour ago or so, Sarah, with the commissioner in Europe. Do you think that Europe will ever get over the fact that whether it's Facebook or Google or Amazon, that the giants who've been so successful have been U.S. corporations, and that they will continue to kind of come after them because they're kind of easy targets, given that none of them are champions in Europe?
Yeah, it's very hard for anybody in Europe to create a competitor to Google. I mean, I think that you have very few places around the world, namely China and in Russia, where there are other search engines and social networks. I don't believe that forever these will remain the most important companies. I do think that we're likely to have at some point another strong competitor to Facebook in the way that Instagram was a competitor. But both of these companies have permeated through people's lives, and in each of those economies play such an important role. So, of course, Europeans don't like the fact that they're American companies. There's not that much they can do about it except for some regulation.